Hey everybody. Hey, why was G Taylor hidden by Barry Lee? Hey Barry, hi G Taylor. Hey everybody. G Taylor. Uh Barry Lee, what'd you do with G Taylor? Bring him back. He's one of our people. Oh, I might have to put him on protective measure. Hey Barry, bring back G Taylor. Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to Zenny62. Uh Sorry for the later than late night start. Well, not for us, but um I had to make sure that everything was personally taken care of. And that's it. But back to housekeeping matters. Yeah, bring back G Taylor. If G Taylor wants to be rude, let me make a determination about that one as we're going, and then I'll let you know. Okay. But I haven't. Thanks. Hey G Taylor, sorry about that. Don't know quite what happened, but welcome and hey to everyone and out there. I will now get to first of all one little other matter of housekeeping before I talk, or I should say more appropriately, social media promotion. And once I get to that one little matter, and that is done. And there we go. Okay, now, all right. The NFL Network. Hey Rob, how you doing? Is G Taylor around? G Taylor, just give me a ping. Are you there? I'm concerned about this. I apologize for what happened. I'll try to take steps that it doesn't happen again. Maybe you're off, or maybe you got turned off. I apologize. Hopefully, G Taylor is back. Let me write something and say, G Taylor, you here? So anyway, we'd like to get G Taylor back. Yeah, Barry, just try to. I understand the rudeness, but just let's establish a rule. If I'm not around to make the determination, don't make the determination. How's that? Okay, just wait for me and say, "Hey, Zenny, I think this should be done. Here's why." Then I'm fine. Other than that, no. G Taylor is a steady player. Okay, and I don't like to chase away steady players. So I might just have to make him a moderator to protect him. Anyway, okay. The National Football League established the NFL Network some years ago with Rich Eisen, and I think back in I want to say 2005. It's been 10 years at least, I believe. And the point of the NFL Network is, when all is said and done, to get out the league's position on something. Okay, the NFL Network is never going to be too hard on the NFL. That's particularly management, even the coaches. That's not the idea. So when the season first started and there was all the hoopla and excitement about the Raiders, it was there was a lot of silence on the part of the NFL Network, a lot of hesitancy in criticizing John Gruden. And there were stretches where the NFL primetime game day prime cast wouldn't even mention the Raiders after several games where the Raiders stunk up the place, right? Well, that started to change. It was a bit of a thaw, I think, 2 weeks ago. But tonight, all the ice came off there. And I can't play it for you for copyright reasons. So I'm just going to basically say to you what happened, because if I play it and the NFL will say, hey, that's ours and do a claim or whatever. But what was said was by Dion, and Dion said that the Raiders were originally a playoff team, and Shannon Sharp, who's part of the quartet, looked at him like, we mean playoff team Raiders. And he goes, yeah, he says, you know what I'm talking about and he didn't say it. And so finally Dion just sort of went for it and said, before they hired the analyst, John Gruden, the Raiders were projected to be a playoff team. We were all excited about the Raiders. Okay. That's what he said. And then they brought in this analyst, and Shannon said, yeah. And then Shannon said, look, you can say we think you should run Spider 2Y Banana, but making Spider 2Y Banana work as a coach, he didn't finish the sentence, but as a coach, that's what he's trying to say, is a different story. And then Dion, and basically LaDainian Tomlinson is basically in the middle of doing the kind of the day from the Partridge Family routine, kind of like right. And I mean, and so I'm doing this because some of you may not have seen the Partridge Family, but there was this guy Dave who was the manager who, when he would bop to the music, he would do this. But it's also like he's agreeing. He's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, LaDainian was essentially doing this. He was doing the Dave from the Partridge Family routine. Anyway, then Dion said, and I thought this is sort of the coup de grace. He said, "Hey, look, he doesn't know how to talk to the players of today, and the players of today." What he was really wanting to say was black players. Okay, the black young men of today are different from the '90s, and he's right. And that comment, that comment is powerful because it came from the league. It came from people who were paid by the NFL. And so, in a number of ways, it speaks huge volumes regarding what the league thinks about the job John Gruden isn't doing and the expectations. And perhaps it provides a bit of a window into what the future of the Raiders will look like. And it may very well be a future without John Gruden. Maybe after year, I'm not saying a parting of the ways come next year. No, not at all. But I'm saying that right now, there's a colossal universal disappointment over Gruden's performance. And that is as much John's fault as it is the Raiders and history. And then it's the part of the mythology, the mythos of John Gruden has been kept alive by people like, well, even myself. Okay, let's face it. I was happy that Gruden came back, although I did push the Rooney Rule, and I felt that there were other people that should be evaluated. And so then I was analytical about John's position as a Republican. I mean, an open, not just Republican donor, but a person who was advancing Republicans for office. However, with the fact that the main candidate he advanced was a black woman, which I thought was really cool. Okay. But the bottom line is he's openly Republican. Okay. And that fact wasn't lost on me in terms of what kind of how John Gruden had changed over 20 years. Okay. But overall, I wasn't saying don't hire John. I was like, oh yeah, he's back. This is great. I was critical, but when they finally sealed the deal, I said, okay, fine, this is great. Because I know John. I'm acquainted with John. I've given plays to John. I like John as a person. I don't like the job of coaching he's doing. Who does? Okay, who does? But it really is time to coldly evaluate where the Raiders are, because some of you out there, not necessarily present company, maybe a few of you, have said, well, just wait until John gets his guys, right? In other words, with these new draft picks that the Raiders have managed to collect, like, collecting empty Coke bottles, they'll do something. And my retort has been, well, they have to pay for them. But I have another one, and it's this. When John Gruden went to the Bucks, he took Tampa Bay to its first Super Bowl with somebody else's players, Tony Dungy's, the former head coach. So how come, right? Okay, so how come now some of you are saying, well, wait until he gets his guys? Why not just use the same model as was applied back then, which is, hey, you know what? He's supposed to be the hallmark of a good coach, Bum Phillips said it best. Bum Phillips was the head coach of the Houston Oilers. And before they became the Tennessee Titans. And Bum Phillips says that he said this of Don Shula. He said Don Shula is so good as a coach, and I'm paraphrasing, that he can take Hizen and beat Yorn, or he can take Yorn and beat Hizen. And, and that's bum speak, basically, for saying that he's good enough to take your players and beat you with them, or take his players and beat you with them. It doesn't matter. He's really, really good. Okay. That cannot be said for John Gruden circa 2018. The Ravens beat the crap out of the Raiders in such a way that I'm concerned that the Raiders will be able to even think of mounting up another win. I want to see the injury list, by Wednesday after this game, because you've got people like Maurice Hurst Jr. had to come off for a bit. There were a lot of people who were banged up. And this I blame on John Gruden and the coach. And the reason is this, because John, and just looking at the game, it looked to me as if Coach Gruden prepared the Raiders for the runner that is Lamar Jackson. But they gave little thought, it seems, to the Ravens' running game and its blocking angles and schemes and style. The Ravens presented to the Raiders the most varied running game I've seen since the 70s. I mean, you don't normally see that in the NFL today. I mean, they had counter trays where they had both the guard and tackle pulling with down blocks. And if it wasn't a counter tray, they would have standard zone blocking. If it wasn't that, they would have sweeps. If it wasn't that, they would have misdirection. They actually had a play where they pulled both the center and the guard this way, and they gave the ball to the tight end going around the other way, like that, completely fooled the Raiders. All right. I'm willing to bet the Raiders were prepared for none of that. And it showed, because the guys would get hit, like Maurice Hurst got hit. He's trying to resist the going one way. You can tell when defenders are surprised that they're facing a particular play or set of plays during a game. It was completely obvious to me that the Raiders had not adequately practiced for the kind of blocking schemes that were thrown at them during the game. And when you are facing a team that is running it, and to say that the Ravens ran it down the Raiders' throat is inaccurate. They didn't run it down the Raiders' throat. They ran it in different directions. So much so that you could cobble together a high-speed film of the Raiders, and have them just kind of like going, hey, okay, all over the place, right? Hey, welcome to Zenny 62, everybody. Like that, all over the place, right? And just say, wow. And it would add up to confusion. At the end of the day, you say, what should the Raiders have done? Gap control. It was one thing to have a guy in a gap, but you have him his shoulders turned all the way this way because he's not expecting a block, and he's like this, and he's fighting to go other way. Is he supposed to be controlling this block, or is he supposed to be the other way? Heck, you're not having him two gap. It didn't look like that. I'm talking about any number of occasions, okay? The Raiders could have solved the problem by playing a wide tackle 6. In fact, most teams that face a running game like the ones the Raiders present play what's called a wide tackle 6. You would say, what's a wide tackle 6? That's where you have a 4-man front defense, where you have the defensive tackles outside the guards and the defensive ends position obviously outside the tackles, down, not standing up, down, okay? Them are generally 1-2 linebackers on either side of the center gap, okay, or the center gaps. And then the outside, then you bring down the safety and the strong safety, make the strong safety a rover, and then you have the strong linebacker, a weak side linebacker, weak side linebacker, bring the strong safety inside, bring the strong safety inside, bring the strong safety down, bring the strong side linebacker inside, and and you have a weak linebacker over here over the end. All right, that's your wide. That's your basic wide, classic wide tackle 6, and that's how you stop that kind of running game. The Raiders did nothing like that. They stayed in their common 7-man, occasional rover, sometimes 5 defensive back sets with the occasional either under or over, either under set for or over set for. And what I mean by under is, I mean, you got 3 guys to one side, 1 guy over here. Nose tackle, end, and then end, right? That kind of set. But a wide tackle 6, I didn't see the Raiders in a wide tackle 6. Nothing like it at all. But that's what you use to stop what the Ravens were presenting. And that gets back to my main point. To me, it looks like John Gruden and, by extension, Paul Guenther, the defensive coordinator, did not prepare for that as adequately as they should have. And I'm saying that because, look, the Ravens didn't come into this game saying, oh, gee, we've discovered this kind of system of running, right? They had some of that in their packages even when Joe Flacco was quarterback. But admittedly, when they had Flacco as quarterback, it was a completely different offense that had one major normal characteristic. They were very quick off the ball. The one thing that the Ravens have been through preseason, both on offense and defense, has been quick off the ball. The ball gets snapped. They get out of their stance and into their blocks very, very quickly. And it's obviously something they practice. The Raiders are a team that plays fast. They don't always, when I say that, they don't always use no huddle. But when it's time to get the play going, they do not waste time. Okay? And everything about their play reflects speed and power and leverage. That was a very impressive game that could have beaten anybody today. The Raiders, I mean, if the Ravens go into the rest of the season the way they did against the Raiders, they're going to be formidable. However, other teams have something to prepare for that really, I think, again, caught the Raiders off guard. Those blocking schemes were killer, man. And something else, too, this is only Lamar Jackson's second game. So this is basically a whole new offense. You have to credit Marty Morningway for coming up with it. If Marty decides to go full-on single wing, boy, Katie bar the door. You're going to be seeing some gaudy rushing numbers in the NFL because the league's not used to seeing what the Ravens are capable of pulling off. And pretty much did today. Okay. It was something else. I'm going to get your comments here. Kevin, don't work backward. Hey, John Marks, how you doing? Freddie Rankin says, rebrand the Raiders in Vegas. Joseph Bensman says, Raiders and Giants with sucky letdowns today. Otis B says, I feel like I'm learning some inside football knowledge here. Oh, thanks, Otis. I appreciate that. Very much. That meant a lot to me. Thank you. Rob Iman says, at some point, Davis will have to put the Raiders up for sale, and Gruden will be under a lot of scrutiny by the new owners. And then Otis says, yeah, you can't be a Republican in California, even though aren't most athletes and coaches Republicans, though? That's interesting. I don't know the answer to that part. I know a lot of owners are, but athletes and coaches, no. Because like Mark Boudin, for example, the president of the Raiders, is, for the most part, a Democratic donor. Kevin Jr. says, what's the use if they can't afford the picks? What's their plan? To add players and trade down. Rod Iman says, Gruden will be scapegoat McKenzie and hire his own flunky as GM next year. Barry Lee says that Gruden screwed up by letting go of Mack, although I contend that was more of a Mark Davis issue than a Gruden issue. And Barry Lee says Gruden's a Republican. Wow, talk about being an enemy line in California. Barry Lee says he remembers the Partners family. Rob Iman says Cal McNair will likely take over the day-to-day operations. He already is, according to John. I got to get John McNair on here, the Houston Chronicle. Okay, so I've got those comments recited. And let me see what I've gotten in. And Otis says, oh, okay, I see. Thanks for the heads up on that. And Tom Kohler, Tom, how you doing? Tom says, I don't understand this at all. They're not the Raiders that I know. And Raymond Garcia chimes in with, he says, it's all bad, as opposed to it's all good. It's looking more and more like a big window to the Raiders' future. And that has to do with the expected announcement regarding the lawsuit. I was told it was going to be wrapped up, the preparation for it, by December. Well, hey, folks, this Friday, Saturday is December 1st, okay? And I'm supposed to go back for the Cal Bic game. I really worry about my mom, though. I hope my mom gets better. So, folks out there, say a prayer for my mom. I would really appreciate it. This has been a tough year. She's got it's kind of an arthritic knee condition that she's better than she was, but it's just been a tough year, okay? And so would much appreciate it. So I'm, I would sent money to pay for my place, but gotta, fly back and then fly back here and make a lot of adjustments. Just tough, you don't have not married, only child, and no family really helping you, frankly. It's just me, So hey, that's candid. That's as I've said before on here, hey, this is vlogging. All right, you're getting it, but I'm not gonna go off on that one. Back to football, but I'm just saying, hey, prayers are more than appreciated. Prayers for her and clients and investors, so I can grow this company and stay here at the same time and take care of her. So that's the idea, because if I have to actually go and work someplace, then that's away from her. And that's something I don't want to do. Just isn't in my mindset. So there you are. There it all is laid bare. All right. So, and so anyway, Ramon Garcia says prayers Barry Lee says, and then Ramon Garcia says that's great, but it should have been handled better. I guess talking about the Raiders. And then Muhammad, how you doing? Muhammad says they traded a top 5 draft from 2 mid to late round picks. Still don't get it. Me neither. Well, no, I do get it. Again, the Raiders don't want to admit this, but the Las Vegas effort is causing them to cut back in other areas. I don't care what anyone tells you, money does not grow on trees. And just because you have an organization that's drawing in the Raiders case, $322 million last year, but their net operating income was $40 million, among the lowest in the league. The Chicago Bears net operating income last year was reported double, 3 times that. Now, net operating income is revenue minus expenses. Okay. So, Joseph, thank you all. And Kevin says prayers. Thank you. And Joseph Bensman says hope. Thank you. And John Mark says, hey, Zen, you got to check out the new Creature Feature show on YouTube. I got on the air with a viewer call segment. Oh, I'll do that, John. Thank you. And John Mark says prayers out for Zenny's mom. Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. So, but here's the thing, and this has to do with the Raiders and what's going on in particular. Okay. And I'm going to go back to how we started this. There is a problem. And Rob Iman did say something else. He says, Zuma says, why is John Gruden dissed? I'll come back to that because you just came in. In fact, for those of you who just came in, I'll recite what I said hey, thank you for the investment, Mr. Blackman. Actually, now triple more shares. Thank you very much. I'll go back to what I said. regarding the start of this. For those of you joining me, all right, here's the situation. The NFL Network on NFL Game Day Prime dissed John Gruden, basically said he can't communicate with a player of today. It's not the 1990s, and that it's far different being a coach than being an analyst. You can't say, hey, look, I think Spider 2 Y Banana is going to work in this situation, as opposed to having to coach a player to run Spider 2 Y Banana to work in a situation only to see that it doesn't work, and you have to figure out some kind of way of adjusting. Okay. And that matches something that I've said before. And a number of people have said, hey, look, John, when he took over the Bucks, won the Super Bowl in 2003 with Tony Dungy's players. Now people today who are, and I'm a Gruden fan, but I'm criticizing him. But those who are really sensitive about others criticizing him, it says, wait until he gets his guys. Well, excuse me. Why is it that now you're giving him excuses and saying he doesn't have his guys when he didn't have his guys when he won his Super Bowl? Okay. These are obvious developments that say what some people have uttered is, hey, look, you know what? The game has passed him by. That, you put a product on the field in terms of an offense that's basically Stone Age, and they made some strides in terms of approaches. But, that reminds me of the other aspect of today's game that really got on my nerves. It's one thing to go into a game like against the Cardinals and you have a moving pocket and everything, but don't occasionally use these approaches. Use them all the time. And against the Ravens, the Raiders did two things among many that royally pissed me off on offense. Okay. One, they kept using these tight formations. The Ravens are a fast, physical team. When you're playing a team that's fast and physical like that, you spread them out. You don't bunch them. The Raiders are calling bunch formation after bunch formation after bunch formation, getting those guys close together so that the space that they have to react to the ball in flight is very small. And you're not getting your speed guys out in space, to get open and create yards. And then that was the first problem. The second problem is that on several occasions, Derek Carr, I'm sorry, I know there are Carr fans out there, was off target. Okay. And this was particularly the case. He got better the second half, but the first half, there were 3 passes, including one on 2nd and 5, where he missed not Seth Roberts, but not Seth. It wasn't Seth Roberts with this number 16, but missed a number of wide open receivers, and on plays that had he hit them, those drives would have continued. All right, they would have picked up significant yardage. That happened on several occasions. Now, the drive to a touchdown was very effective because he mixed in, Gruden did, no huddle with, the occasional play and some quick hitting plays, both running and passing. And then after they got out of the scheme, the predetermined set of plays that he has on his sheet, once again, the offense began to unravel. And then what happened was that when the Ravens would score, Gruden would try to come back throwing deep, passing rather than keeping it short, deliberately getting 5-yard chunks to basically keep the defense off the field. Why? Because again, I'm going to say this again, the Raiders had not adequately prepared. Note I said adequately in italics, had not adequately prepared for a very complex set of running blocking schemes the Ravens were throwing at them. It was like the 70s with very varied running plays, counter tray here, then they had pulled the center and the guard here, handed off to the tight end on jet sweep going the other way, what's called negative influence play, right? Meanwhile, what do we do on offense? I mean, the Ravens produced a textbook example of how to effectively run in the 21st century in the National Football League, and with their quarterback and without. If the Ravens had decided to go all no huddle, they would be a handful, more of a handful to deal with. Corey Brown says, I don't think it's likely, but do you think it's possible one of the NFL owners gave the Raiders a thumbs up to Vegas while secretly coveting Oakland for their team eventually? I haven't thought about that, but that could be. That could be. Kevin Jr. says, I can hear Shannon saying that. Shannon Sharp. 32 Assassin. How you doing? 32 says, Corey, the burning franchise. Tough sell, lots of spite, and hurt to overcome. I think one thing to consider, 32 Assassin, is, frankly, the amount of population turnover we've had in Oakland, and the ability to introduce a new old brand like the Oakland Invaders, something that has blue and gold, has a reach to the past, and the Oakland Invaders and the USFL were, in a sense, a response to the Raiders having relocated, right, to LA. Well, what better thing to do than to bring back the Invaders as a response to what? The Raiders having relocated to Las Vegas. Just saying. So there's a lot of scenarios you can play with there. Rob Iman says, fact or fiction? Raiders draft Will Grier in April. Let me come back to you on that one. Muhammad says they need to fire Tom Cable. Wasn't happy to see Tice go. 35 sacks will not cut it. Muhammad says next season will be interesting. John Harbaugh and Mike McCarthy will be available. Patrick and Blackman says the Ravens beat us with a quarterback we should have drafted. Amen. The Raiders should have drafted Lamar Jackson. John Mark says, yes, bring back the Oakland Invaders. Yeah, I'm going to get to the whole point about Muhammad's comment regarding Tom Cable. I personally like the job that Tom Cable is doing, but it's the play design that I have an issue with. If you're not getting enough time, you don't say, hey, look, in the modern age, you're not giving me enough time. You say, I'll shorten the play and I'll design it so that my quarterback doesn't need to hold on to the ball as much. Under Bill Musgrave, I think Derek Carr held on to the ball for an average of 1.67 seconds, something like that. I mean, back in the boom, that thing was gone. All right. Time motion studies mean a great deal. And so the old idea of, well, I'm just going to have you hold the blocks until the cows come home, it doesn't fly today. You have too many athletes. I mean, guys that can bench press almost 1,000 pounds, if not 1,000 pounds. Come to think, you have women who can bench press about that much down. You ever seen some of those Instagrams where you have women who, like there's this woman, Katie Sawyer. She's a physical therapist in Miami, but she does this kind of thrusting exercise with like 500 pounds on her hip. I'm not kidding you. She does it like 5 times. I'm like, she did 600 pounds at one point. I'm not kidding you. The athletes of today are just, I'm a fan of female athletes, okay, are just incredible. But it just buttresses my point. You got guys out there on both sides of the ball, offense and defense, who are super athletes. So you're asking the other guy to hold out this other fellow who has this capability and then has martial arts training and everything else. Why go through all that? Okay, because the simple fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter how much stronger the players get on either side of the ball. Their bones are the same. So you get hit harder, you get injured faster, you get injured longer. Why create that scenario? Why create that scenario? Why not just have plays that take less time to execute? Right? Makes it easier on everybody. Think it through. Lawrence Val says Gruden is tanking. I don't think the game passed him by. He knows it's a losing season. He's not going to show his good plays till he gets the guys he wants. But Lawrence, explain to me this. How come he was able to do it in Tampa with guys that were not his? He took over Tampa. All right? I mean, explain that to me. He comes in for the 2002 NFL season, in which 2003's Super Bowl was played in San Diego. I was there. And he basically does it with John. He does it with Tony Dungy's guys. There was no big turnover at all. You had Brad Johnson at quarterback. Okay, explain that to me, Val. I'm curious. Why do I have to wait for him to get his guys this time when I didn't before? John Mark says I can see the Raiders hiring John Harbaugh, Mike McCarthy as head coach in 2019 if they fire Gruden, which I don't think they're going to fire Gruden. John's not going to be a one-year wonder. Raider Montoya says Oakland Invaders was the first time when the NFL was on strike. Let the Raiders go, and that can be a new expansion team for Oakland in the NFL. Corey Brown says, has our alleged no viable plan messed up our shot at future football in Oakland? No, I don't think so at all. John Mark says, I can Oakland getting an expansion club named the Oakland Marauders. E. Mosley says not firing Gruden. No. And I don't, I personally would hate to see that happen. John is getting a crash course in the modern game of football, coaching with players who are different. I'm going to say something that has to do with how eras have changed. And I think what Dion was talking about and others, they were talking about the African-American player. And the one big change I noticed in black players coming to the NFL, black football players, was in 2010, between 2010 and 2013. And guys like Prince Amukamara and guys like Nanakum Sue, engineering majors. I mean, these dudes were not just smart. I mean, whipper smart. Okay. These guys are brilliant guys. All right. Who come in the league with engineering degrees. They understand a life beyond football already. Okay. That's baked into their heads. They express themselves intellectually, confidently. And if you are a coach who is white, or really of any other, but in particular white, and you're used to players who don't think that way, who are yes sir, no sir, who don't question anything, who just basically do what you say, okay, and maybe they don't get the greatest grades in school, and maybe in some cases, like the sad case of Dexter Manley, the great Washington Redskins defensive end who was basically coddled in college that it was known that he couldn't read, but they basically let him skate through because he was a football player. You don't have that today. And so coaches that have been in the ranks a long, long time, frankly speaking, a lot of them don't know how to deal with that kind of player. All right. That's why Sean McVay with the Rams is so successful. He knows he doesn't have all the answers. Todd Gurley really, laid it out there in I think indirectly describing the difference between Jeff Fisher, who was his coach his first year, and Sean McVay later. Because when Jeff Fisher was the coach, it was Todd Gurley who basically said they ran a middle school offense. Middle school, okay? A middle school offense, all right? And let's see. Tom Caller says MD will not fire John Gruden. That's not possible. He's too expensive. Kevin Jr. says, yeah, it's a guaranteed contract. Kevin Jr. says, I believe most of these young players, 30 and younger, don't want to play for him. And I've heard that a lot. Welcome to Zenny62, everybody. Lawrence Ball says, everyone has said he's won a Super Bowl with Dungy's team. John wants to prove people wrong and get his own guys. Doesn't want to live in someone else's shadow. I'm not saying I agree with it. But look, John, I would hope John's not wasting wasting our time with that kind of thought. Because again, it goes back to, Lawrence, it goes back to what Bum Phillips said. Hey, welcome to Zenny62, and I'll recap the whole NFL Network thing. Anyway, it goes back to what Bum Phillips said again about Don Shula. He can take Hizen and beat Yorn. He can take Yorn and beat Hizen. And Otis B says, well, I didn't know Sue and Amokamura have engineering degrees. Sue does. Mukherjee, I believe, also does, if memory serves. I interviewed both. Great people, and just right off the bat, minds at work, and they're not the only ones. Okay, and it's really refreshing to see that we, as a group in the United States, I'm talking about African Americans in the United States in terms of our trajectory. Okay, you have to remember something. When I was born, it was 1962. That was something called the color line, where a number of states that there was segregation, and of course, if you know your American history, you know what I'm talking about. And so within that, there is our advance. So what I'm saying is basically about American history. And it's really gratifying to see those of us who are intellectually confident and express their ideas and create new systems and new approaches and software and everything else in all walks of life. That's the way it should be. Okay. So, but in that development, there are people who are a little slow to catch up. And in the NFL, you have some coaches who are a little slow to catch up to the player who is that way. All right. Because the coach is used to a player just doing what the coach says, not having another idea or saying, this isn't going to work. All right. One way or the other. The Derek Carrs of the world are not like that, but you can tell when Derek's patience gets a little thin. Derek is a true Christian, and he conducts himself like that in his life and his dealings with people, and it comes off. And God bless him for that. I hope that God really does bless him. The young man deserves it. And anyway, E. Mosby says Dungy's team would not have beat the Raiders. Gruden's knowledge of his former team beat the Raiders single-handedly. You're missing the point, Mr. Mosby. You're kind of forgetting the fact that they had to go through the season to get to the Super Bowl. All right. Again, they went through the season to get to the Super Bowl with Dungy's players. It wasn't that they were just sort of thrown into the Super Bowl. All right. And so you say John's knowledge of his former team as if that was the only game the Raiders and the only game the Buccaneers played the entire year. I remind you, they had to go through the regular season and then through the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl. So that idea is wrong that you've expressed. It doesn't make any sense. Think about it logically. Just think it through before you respond. Otis B says, dang, a middle school offense. That's what Mr. Gurley said. Raider Montoya, welcome. Raider says, Callahan took over a Raider team that was built by Gruden. So put 2 and 2 together on why Tampa won the Super Bowl when Gruden was their coach. But again, folks, think systemically. You have to go through a season to get to the Super Bowl. It wasn't just the Super Bowl. Is your head screwed on straight? This is really pissing me off. Think about it. I'm talking about the season. Come on, guys. Don't let me down. Use your brain. I mean, come on. I don't believe this stuff. They played the Eagles. They won, the Buccaneers did, in Philadelphia. They were expected to lose. They didn't. They came in with a fantastic game plan, great use of Joe Jurevicius, and a fantastically prepared game plan by Coach Gruden. Think. All right? The Super Bowl was not the only game the Buccaneers played that season. They went through preseason, regular season, playoffs, and then the Super Bowl. That's how it works. He did that, Gruden did, without turning over the team. Major League. Oh, all right. My God. Okay. Big April says the Raiders are a bye week for the rest of the season and next. John Mark says 60 people strong. Yeah, 62 now. Rob Iman says NCAA has penalized schools for not making appropriate. So NCAA wants athletes to plan for careers beyond athletics, thankfully. But, I think it starts in high school, not just there. It's a different mindset. It's more mainstream. You have, today it's more mainstream to be, the idea of being anything is not as relegated to any one person or regardless of color as it was in the past. And that's a sign of major social progress. That's the way it should be. Lawrence Val says, I think Carr, including the fact that you have a lot of black Republicans, right? I'm not one of them, but I have friends. You see my point? Lawrence Val says, I think Carr knows he's going to get cut after this year. That's why he said he wants to shake up the draft. Derek Carr has no control over the draft at all. Ving, says see the Raiders moving to Las Vegas, and this is what's giving us paying fans. This hurts. I agree. Pride and Purpose. How you doing? Pride and Purpose is Charles Woodson as coach, player, liaison. I like the idea. Eduardo Delgado says, would Rubin Foster be a decent investment? Yes. And you know what? I want to pick up on that Rubin Foster deal. And if somebody's on either Facebook or Twitter, could you retweet this, Barry Lee? Maybe you're out there. Hopefully you haven't went to bed just yet. Thanks for coming. Rob Iman says, Carr will likely head to Jacksonville. 32 Assassin says, the greatness of the Raiders, excuse me, the greatness of the Raiders is not in its future. It was in the 60s, 70s, and the first half of the 80s with a few blips on the screen. Rob Iman says, actually, you know what? When I look at that stadium in Vegas, I would say the greatest of the Raiders is in its future. I may not look, it's kind of like this. I don't like how it was done, but that stadium, that arena, nice, okay? It's going to be, when they get it right, it's going to be cool. Rob Iman says, Rubin Foster should not be touched with a 10-foot pole. 32 Assassin says, results, those are permanent. Continuity and consistency breed success. Patrick M. Blackman says, that Ed Oliver situation on the sidelines is the new mentality of the black athlete. You just can't outright do things and don't get called out on it. The coach had no right doing that. What did Oliver think, Patrick? You have to, I guess I didn't see that one. Lawrence Vol says, I hope it's not true also, but look at his attitude toward the Mac, Khalil Mack, Marquez King, and Michael Crabtree. He didn't like their personalities, so he cut them. He's always having problems with eccentric personalities. I could go a step further and basically say that it looks like John has a problem in his modern way with the outspoken black athlete. All right. And if you consider all of them, they are, and even there are guys who speak their mind, and they've each one of them have made their way in life. Okay. Or let's turn it around another way and not even consider color for a moment. Let's just consider generation. Look at Baker Mayfield and how Baker Mayfield responded or not to Hugh Jackson. Okay. Baker's a powerful personality, a smart guy, a guy I'd love to coach and quarterback. And, he's rightfully not happy with how he was handled with respect to Hugh Jackson. And he has a right to be, and he's basically expressing and he's acting out. And he's acting out in ways that are positive on the field and negative, on the microphone. The modern athlete has an active brain, has something that can take that person in many different directions of life, not just play football. And thankfully, that athlete is as much black as he is white. And my point is, there are some coaches that cannot deal with that. Younger coaches who are closer to their age and generation can. That's why Sean McVay is doing so well. That's one reason. That's not the only reason. All right. Rada Montoya says, let's make it a little clear. I'm saying Gruden can build a team. Okay, cool. Mosby says, never said they weren't any good, but only talking about Tampa Bay versus the Raiders. If Gruden's not coaching Tampa, Tampa loses that Super Bowl. I agree. I agree with you there. Rob Iman says, Foster needs to get right before resuming his football career. I'll come back to that in a second because I disagree with all of you on Mr. Foster's take. Prime Purpose says, use first pick of draft to move back and grab stud middle linebacker. Otis B says, yeah, athletes are different nowadays and more open-minded. I don't think the Raiders have a personnel issue. The Raiders have a coaching issue. It's funny how, okay, and again, how many examples do we need of teams that had great players that didn't go to the Super Bowl or win it, and then the next year they did? And John Gruden is in the middle of one of those examples. Rubin Foster. All right. Let me take a drink of water before I get to comment about Mr. Foster. Okay. Rubin sadly was arrested on a felony domestic violence charge Saturday. But as it came out, it looked like at first, and I thought this, that he was with the same girl, Miss Ennis, Elsa Ennis, who he got him into trouble and tried to extort money from him, and he was cleared of court, in court earlier this year, right? It turned out that wasn't the case. He got a new girlfriend, Cassie, a few months ago. And for some reason, and maybe some of you out there have read accounts I haven't read, in between 6 hours ago and now, 7 hours ago and now, 8 hours ago and now. But for some particular reason, Elsa showed up, and Miss Ennis showed up at the team hotel. She never went to the hospital, and there weren't any, appreciable bruises or whatever. So this is beginning to look like a situation where Rubin has gotten hold of a really toxic person that has been on and destroying him. That's what it looks like. I don't know the details, but obviously, he didn't go to her place as it was thought. He didn't. Someone reported, when it was first reported, it was reported as if he stayed with her while he was in Florida. He was at the team hotel. All right. So I don't know the truth. All right. But what I do know is that the league should be, just like the NBA should be transporting Steph Curry from his home to practice, the NFL should be treating its players, as if they are guarded royalty with security. And as opposed to having them even had to the point of having a special dating site for NFL players. NFL players only dating site. You can vet the women that sign up, and then the player knows about the person that's trying to date them, and only certain, you have a better crop, and therefore the player is protected, as opposed to this free for all that gets player after player after player in trouble. The NFL, it doesn't make any sense for the league to spend millions of dollars on player development only to have stuff like this happen again and again and again. And at some point, you have to stop blaming the player and you have to start blaming the league. And I blame the league. Okay, Rubin Foster is a league employee. He is also a young man, just coming out of college, coming from the South, African American, where it's a different set of culture, different culture here than the Bay Area. Got mixed up with the wrong crowd, including that person, and not just in the Bay. I'm not saying she's from the Bay Area, but he got mixed up with the wrong situation where the Niners didn't take care of him. Okay, so he has two worlds: his football, world, and then off the field. But the reality is that he really has one world that's impacted by what he does in both places. So, getting your comments. Otis B says, yeah, athletes are different nowadays and more open-minded. Otis B also says, that's sad about Rubin Foster. I really thought he turned his life around. We'll see where he goes from here. Otis B says, speaking of transporting players, didn't Kobe used to take planes to Laker games in LA to avoid traffic? I agree with the idea, though. Players can avoid more trouble. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Again, how many examples of this do we have to go through until we start looking at the league and saying, hey, this is your responsibility, NFL. If I can, and I was thinking about this but if I can go on any membership site, right? You have to give your age, your background. Look, if you on LinkedIn, you have your name, you've got your education, your curriculum vitae, everything that you've done, all right? Why can't the NFL have a system like that for people that are officially part of the NFL family. This is where they really have to stamp what that means. And I don't mean just in terms of having a dating site, but also uh, photographers, contractors, musicians in different cities you want to hire for parties. Vet everybody because it protects the league. The league has too much to lose. All right, too much to lose. Mohammed says, I don't think many players are coming to the Raiders. Gruden is known to have trust issues. Goes back to days in Tampa. Remember how he said offense would be around Cooper and then you trade him? Yeah, but I think I'm going to defend John here. Again, it goes back to money problems that have reared their head in Vegas. Okay, note the Raiders have one major sponsor signed up. They need 14 for the stadium. Note the Raiders have a problem where the stadium tax revenue is lower than it was projected to be by the consultants. And that stadium tax revenue, stadium hotel tax revenue, goes to pay the bond issue starting next year. It's just over $500 million short on a monthly basis. So the Raiders collect that money and they use that for the construction. So they're, by my estimate, about a good overall $15 million, $13 million short. They have to figure out where to get that money. Then there are other costs they have to deal with, like with parking and everything else that no one talks about. Okay. And the Las Vegas media has been see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil, right? Jeez, awful stuff. Olivero Delgado says, can't compare Curry's prestige to Foster. I don't understand that statement. Mr. Mosby says, NFL dating site is a bad idea. Think about it. I have thought about it. Why is it a bad idea? Otis B says, NFL Tinder. Last laugh out loud. Why not? Muhammad says, that sponsorship isn't a team issue. It's a management problem, though. Oh, geez, Louise. Look, the money that management makes goes to pay players, okay? It's not just that chunk that they get from the NFL. There's a reason why the NFL had established, I believe, 2 years ago, a policy where they wanted, I believe, at the minimum, each team to have a $25 million local sponsorship revenue take. That really drove, to a large degree, these relocations because the Raiders didn't have that in Oakland. They're on pace to having that if they play their cards right in Las Vegas with its casino industry, okay? And the law changes. So you have to understand that a problem the Raiders had in the Bay Area was this apparent kind of lack of understanding of how to work with and get sponsorships from tech companies in ways that, and it takes an approach that they're not used to. For example, one way would basically, I have advocated for, is turning the Coliseum on game day into sort of a type of tech expo where you can go around and see different kiosks, different startup offerings and different offerings from big companies, you know. Maybe you can buy a smartphone or watch before it's on the market, test out something in a tech cafe, right? And be able to do this every single game. Okay. And or maybe on top of that, have a meeting with like Mark Zuckerberg and say, hey, look, we want to work with you to design the Facebook stadium. What would a football and sports stadium, a football/sports stadium look like if it were designed by Facebook? Okay. I wasn't going to say, or Apple. I wasn't going to put them together because right now Tim Cook and Mark Zuckerberg can't stand each other. You see what I'm getting at? The Raiders never tried to leverage that. those kind of relationships. They didn't try to establish those kind of relationships to leverage them to move forward, is what I'm saying. All right. John Mark says, I think players need some kind of school of how to date certain women and not whores. Agreed. Muhammad Ahmad says, money comes from good product, right? If you literally cross the street from IT hub of the world, there's a problem. And then he continues, I get it. 49ers won over a lot of sponsors, but it's called competition. Yeah, I agree with you, Muhammad. You're absolutely right. Hey, Cobra, how you doing? Muhammad says, then moving now when people are jumping ship to Oakland, a true head scratcher. Muhammad says, I agree. Vegas Stadium will be great, but nothing financially compared to Oakland. Agreed. Patrick and Blackman says, Al Davis always had problems working with others in every he always wanted to dominate people. Yeah, and I agree. I understand that was a different time. And I think the Raiders had this idea that as long as they were winning on the field, the sponsorship would come. But it's different now. And at the time the Raiders were thinking that, there was the Dallas Cowboys with, even though they did lose a lot of money, according to Jerry Jones, when he took them over, it was still the greatest leadership triumvirate in the history of sports when you had Tex Schramm as the president of the Cowboys, and the marketing whiz, Tom Landry as the head coach, and Gil Brandt as the personnel manager. Okay. That was a great management relationship there. And so 32 Assassin says Kobe Bryant had a pad in Newport Coast, exclusive area, helicopter. He would get flown to Staples, land at the adjacent high-rise, and use an underground tunnel to get to the arena, so I've heard. I'd love to see that video. That sounds so James Bondish, right? Rob Iman says, Jed York has done a good job building bridges with sponsors in the past 2 years. He has. Otis B says, oh, okay, I see. Thanks, 32 Assassin, for the heads up on that. Patrick and Blackman says, that's why sponsors are always weary when dealing with Al Davis. But, now you've got NFL business ventures to help out. There's a problem there that that has not been fully discussed. All right. Rob Iman says they are still at odds with the city of Santa Clara, though. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that, Rob. And the Jed and particularly his PR person could do themselves a lot better in the future if they had shown more public respect for the mayor of Santa Clara and the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, all of which are female. Not a good look the way they treated them last year. Not a good look at all. There's an old saying from Mary Poppins, just the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, right? And somewhere along the way in their political dealings, the 49ers forgot that. So, that they didn't do themselves any favors, no. But my point is the opportunity to work with tech companies and establish, a state-of-the-art stadium of the future. No one's done that. I don't mean in terms of design. I mean in terms of tech operations. Just let them the Coliseum be a fantastic test bed for that, This place where you not just order from a seat, but you know what? Here's an idea. Make the standing room only experience at the stadium in and of itself worth something. Okay, you don't have a seat, but you have a phone. And so you have your phone, maybe you have an app where that only works in the arena or in the stadium, and you can locate friends in it. And then if you have a family and your family gets here's something, think about this. You have a family and family of 4, right? And your kid gets separated from you. Maybe you have on your app a way you can actually locate where the kid is in the stadium. Wouldn't that be cool? Right? So, you could pinpoint where the kid is. So you basically be able to monitor where your kid is. On the other hand, your kid can find you. Wouldn't that be so cool? Right? And then everybody else has a pinpoint as to where everybody else is in the stadium. You can find your friends, you know. Oh, so and so is over by the cocktail lounge, and thus and so is over getting shrimp, scampi over here, right? Something like that. And then work with a company to develop that. And then you can sponsor a product with that app. I mean, it's so many innovations that could come out of a pairing of tech companies in the NFL with respect to in-stadium development, All right. Let's see here. Oh, Patrick says, what has become of Candlestick Park site? Oh, before that, Lawrence Voss says, if it's a money issue, he says, if it's a money issue, when will the Raiders be relevant again? Second year in Vegas? Yeah. Once the key to watch when the Raiders rise financially, watch the sponsorships. Right now, there's Caesars, but they need more. Atlanta here has 14 of them. They're called founding partners. The founding partners concept is a standard approach by NFL ventures with respect to new stadiums. It was used, I believe, at MetLife. It was used at Soldier Field in Chicago. It's being used, of course, here at Atlanta. We have Coca-Cola, Porsche, Mercedes-Benz. They're all founding partners, okay? So that the Raiders right now have one founding partner, and that's Caesars Entertainment. But they need to raise $1 billion, so by my calculations, they need an additional 13. So there you are. Okay, so watch out for that. That's a great question, Lawrence. And Patrick asked, "What has become of Candlestick Park site?" Well, it's unused, and right now it's dormant. John Mark says, "Can the city of San Francisco still build a new NFL team stadium for the 49ers?" Well, sure, but they have to get the 49ers to play in it. And they would have to fight the city of Santa Clara to do that. And by my guess, the city of Santa Clara would basically sue them, for tortious interference on a bond issue. Okay. Rob Iman says Candlestick Park is now houses. Otis B says that would be cool. Is that right? Let me see. Candlestick Point. It's been a while since I looked over there. I know Lennar built over there, but I didn't think that what they were building also encompassed the stadium itself, because there's still it's called the Candlestick Point State Recreation Area, and in terms of, and it's still active. There's Candlestick Point State Recreation Area, and it is to be an eventual development according to Curb, with streets named for the 49ers and Giants Hall of Fame. And that's as of April 19th of last year. So Rob Iman is dead on right about, it's called, oh, of course, this is Kofi's project. Stupid me. Developer 5 Point, my friend Kofi Bonner is a head of 5 Point, which is a spinoff of Lennar. They just went public, I think, this year. Anyway, Developer 5 Point, a spinoff of the Lennar Corporation, the company adding thousands of new units to the city's southern neighborhoods, announced today that it will name 9 new streets in the Candlestick Point area after former 49ers and San Francisco Giants players and staff. The Giants departed Candlestick Park itself now departed in 2000 in favor of their current residents in South Beach, and the 49ers forced San Francisco altogether in favor of Santa Clara. But at least they'll remain in name once development in the neighborhood of the former ballpark finishes. 5 Point said in a press release that both the company and the city will confer the names of NFL Hall of Famers and 49er veterans Joe Montana, Ronnie Lott, and Jerry Rice on incoming avenues, along with former coach Bill Walsh, former team owner Edward DeBartolo Jr., and former Vice President Common Policy. They should include, you know what? It says Baseball Hall of Famers and former Giants Orlando Cepeda and Juan Marichal will also get the street treatment along with home run record holder Barry Bonds. It says surprisingly, nobody announced the forthcoming Willie Mays Avenue or Willie Mays Street, although a cable car and plaza at AT&T Park bear his name. But you know what? We need to add to this list? Dwight Clark. They need to add Dwight Clark to that list too. Anyway, thanks for that, Rob Iman. Otis B says, anyway, that would be cool, John, but I doubt it. We don't have that much space in San Francisco, even though it's kind of too bad the Niners didn't look in the Mission Bay area. I agree. Otis says there are supposed to be houses where Candlestick puts going on there, and I think I'll blog about it just to kind of ping Kofi a bit. Rob Iman says, Gavin Newsom played hardball with the Yorks. He tried to pitch them Hunters Point Shipyard. Well, I think what happened, Rob, because I knew Kofi when that was there, it was, I don't know if he played hardball so much. Well, okay. He did. I think he was a little tone deaf with respect to their needs, but yeah, he was. Okay, I'm not even gonna disagree with you. That was, I think, by Gavin's own admission, I think Gavin would like to have that back. All right, I think he'd like to have that back. And anyway, John Mark says, I think Mark Davis needs to sell the Raiders to Oakland business billionaires and work out a deal with a Coliseum City reboot. Thank you. That's my idea. Thank you. Well, not that whole idea he's talking about, but the Coliseum City reboot is my idea. Anyway, Raider Montoya says, do you think Oakland will lawsuit? Okay, yes, I do. E. Mosby says, John Marks, wishful thinking on board, though. I'm on board, though. And John Marks says, no, Raider Montoya, it's a money issue, not a team issue. E. Mosley says, lawsuit, not about the name, it's about money. Right. The lawsuit's not about the name. It is about money. And Otis B says, yeah, it's Gavin Newsom's fault as to why the Niners aren't in SF anymore. Raider Montoya says, okay, it's about the bond depth department. I get that, but can the city also bring that up in a suit, or is that different? Just curious. Don't quite understand Raider Montoya, but let me explain it. Let me explain it this way. A lawsuit, or the lawsuit, City of Oakland to the NFL and the Raiders, will be for damages because that pair did not operate in good faith and violated its own relocation agreement in the process. It's very similar to what St. Louis is doing right now, okay? The NFL made a gigantic mistake in laying out this playbook that made it look like there was this intention of keeping home teams in their host cities, their home cities. But in reality, that wasn't the case at all. Because this is where you get into what Eric Grubman said and how it almost seems like he was trying to move the goalpost all the time. And then something Eric got mad at me for. Eric worked for Goldman Sachs and became wealthy when Goldman Sachs went public in the 90s. And so my argument was, hey, wait a minute. How do we know that he is not steering deals, these stadium deals, toward Goldman Sachs and Greg Carey from his position as head of NFL Business Ventures? Well, I wrote that, and Eric hit the ceiling and basically confronted me on the issue at the NFL annual meeting, not this year, but the year before. And I said to him right then and there, I said, look, I have I said, you know, that if in my position, that I am in my position, I have nothing against you at all, Eric. I think you're a fine person, but you know that that question sat out there to be asked. I had to ask it, if only to have you tell me I'm wrong. but I'm not going to be bullied into not asking it. Okay. And that was essentially how I felt I was being dealt with. It was kind of like, you have no business. How dare you infer this? Well, no, I'm not. Anybody on my side of the ball who sees that kind of relationship is irresponsible for not bringing it up. Okay. Completely irresponsible. So but within that conversation, that was one more example of how there was a distrust about what the league's intentions were. That this whole thing was set up just to move teams from one place to the other to get public money and to get these relocation agreements for the owners to enrich themselves. Okay, so the lawsuit is about the specific torts that were done against the city of Oakland that caused, for example, Oakland District 7 Councilman Larry Reed to say to me in 2016, that they lied to us when he was talking about the whole Vegas issue. Or in 2015, when Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf realized that the Raiders were actually working behind her back to try and go to Carson. This is some bad stuff here. So that's really what it's all about. All right. E. Moses says, thanks for the 49er move and Newsom. That was news to me. And 32 Assassin says, name became a possibility if the city wins and Mark has to negotiate a settlement. He's broke, as we know. Mayor Raider Montoya says, thanks for clearing that up for me. I was confused on my end. There's one NFL owner, at least, I'm not going to say who said, hey, you know what? He doesn't have deep pockets, so we're going to watch where he goes. Folks, it is now 1:17. And now, excuse me, it's not 1:17. It's an hour and 17 minutes. It's 2:07 in the morning Eastern, and I'm going to do this. And I want to thank everybody for coming in. This has been a rousing, fun, as Lawrence. You can tell I'm tired when I'm saying Lawrence Welk. I remember when my dear grandfather. I don't know why my grandfather liked Lawrence Welk. I mean, yeah, no, whatever. But you go just type Lawrence Welk on YouTube. You'll see what I mean. I mean, I don't mean personally. I mean the whole music in the show was kind of like. Zzz. But I love and miss my grandfather. But I was actually thinking of Ed Sullivan, which goes back to my childhood as well. He would say, thanks for a really big shoe. Shoe, not show. Shoe, right? Yeah. So anyway, there you go. Okay. Tomorrow, I will be back earlier. I promise. More like 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific. As John Marks would say, watch horror films, keep America strong. And that reminds me, I still haven't seen Halloween. Dang it. All right. Good night, everybody. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. Or is it today? Thanks again.